Hello, dear students. Today we are going to start with our lecture on immunology, which is the first unit. And in this, we are going to discuss about the general overview about the immune system, its basic components, and the first line of defense. See, when we talk of our immune system, it is a highly evolved, actually versatile defense system, which has been created to protect the humans and all the living beings from any kind of foreign invasion. And these invaders, they can be either actually present outside our body or they can be present inside our body. So, if we talk of the COVID 19 havoc, so the major player in this COVID 19 infection is again the immune system. The people, those who are able to actually fight against these invaders, they survive, and those who are not able to fight against these invaders, they succumb to death. And that is why the elderly people are more prone to the deaths, because their immune system is more compromised. See, the first term in this is the immunology, which is a combination of two words, that is immuno and logy. So immuno is actually derived from a Latin term which means immunus, and logy is basically the study of something. So immunus, it means exempt from something. So together, this immunology is actually the study of immunity or the study of exemption, right, or protection. So then what is actually this immunity? See, immunity is that self-inherent ability of our body to fight against any kind of foreign invasion. Now, there is a fine line of difference between this the self and the non-self, and this is an important property of our immune system also, because there are certain components which are there in the body itself, but they turn out to be pathogenic to us. Means they are otherwise they are the self components, but they turn out to be pathogenic to us, like the cancer cells. So immune system gets triggered in that way to remove these components out of the body. Then the another term which is quite important is the pathogens. So pathogens is again derived from two words. The patho means disease and gen means generating. So pathogens are basically the disease causing agents. Okay, like bacteria, viruses, and many more. Then the next term which is derived from this is the pathogenicity, which means the ability to cause the disease. Now, the third term which is derived from this pathogenicity term is the virulence. Now, virulence, what does it mean? It means the degree of pathogenicity. So, if I use this term highly virulent, means this particular form is highly pathogenic. If I say less virulent, this means the particular microbial form or any foreign invader is less virulent. And if I use the term avirulent, means they are non-pathogenic. So these three terms are very important before going into the details of immunology, that is pathogens, pathogenicity, and virulence. See, we are talking about the pathogens, but do you think that it's so easy for a pathogen to establish themselves within our body? No. It is very difficult for them before establishing themselves within our body, because our immune system is so well versed that it actually fights with all these intruders in such a way so that they are not able to enter into our body or establish any kind of infection. So the first and foremost important thing for any pathogen to be a pathogen is that it must be able to gain access to the body. See, if we see our skin layer, it is so highly intact that no pathogen can gain entry through this intact layer. And it is only when this outer layer gets breached or broken in case of wounds or anything like that, or accidents, then only these pathogens can enter into our body by breaching this first line of defense. Then second thing is that after gaining entry, they must be able to attach to some surface. Okay. Then the third, this attachment is by means of some receptors which are there on the pathogens with the receptor sites which are there on the host cells. Otherwise, what will happen? We know that our body, internal body system, is not static. It is a dynamic system. It's in a constant motion. So anything which will gain entry into it, it will be removed out of our body because of the constant fluid flow. Okay. Now the fourth most important thing is that these pathogens, they must be able to reproduce. That means they must become acquainted with the environment of the host. So they must be able to increase their number by avoiding the host immune system long enough to produce the harmful changes and establish the disease actually. Now, there is another term which is very important, is the normal microbiota. See, there are certain microorganisms which reside in our body normally, and they are non-pathogenic to us under normal conditions, right? So we live in a symbiotic association with these microorganisms, or so-called opportunistic pathogens. Means they are not pathogenic, but when the conditions become favorable or conducive to them, then they turn out to be pathogens to us. So we live in a symbiotic association with these microorganisms. That means this is a kind of association in which we are also benefited and they are also benefited. So how we are benefited, like the normal microbiota, how it actually protects us is that they consume the nutrients that would otherwise be available to the pathogens. Okay, so the pathogens have to fight with these normal microbiota to establish themselves. Second, they sometimes change the certain parameters of the biological milieu, like the pH, so that the foreign invaders, they cannot survive in that environment. Third, they sometimes also stimulate the second line of defense, which is even more well versed as compared to the first line of defense. And the fourth one is that the normal flora of intestines, sometimes they improve our health also. See, I told you that we live in a symbiotic association with them by producing several types of vitamins, and the common example is that of a E. coli, which resides in our, which is an important part of our gut flora, and normally they are not non-pathogenic to us, but when they move from the intestinal region to the urinary tract region, they turn to be a very pathogenic form, right? So this is an example of opportunistic pathogens. Now, then coming to the next one, that is the immunity. So immunity, I've told you that this is an inherent ability of our body to fight against any kind of foreign invaders. So this is of two types, that is a natural and acquired, right? Natural means which is there right from the time of our birth, and acquired means which we adapt and which we actually gain during our growth from a child to the later stages. So this is actually of two types, that is active and passive. And when I say this term active means, because you must be hearing these two terms now, the active is the one I give you by means of this comparative chart. See, active immunity is the one which is a developed immunity, whereas passive immunity is the one which is a produced immunity. So when I say this developed immunity means, in this the antigens are administered, and now your body is free to synthesize the antibodies against these antigens, and these antigens are such that they are immunogenic but they are not pathogenic, right? See, just understand this difference, that they are immunogenic, that means they will trigger the immune system but they will not trigger the pathogenicity. Okay. Now next is in case of passive immunity, the antibodies are administered. That means simply the plasma from the individual who has survived some infection, the plasma of that individual is then administered to the individual who is affected with that infection. See, this is the thing which is going on nowadays. You must have heard of the plasma therapy for COVID-19 infections. So that is actually a sort of passive immunity. Then active immunity, it develops slowly and long lasting, whereas the passive immunity is relatively fast and short lived. Now booster dose can be given in case of active immunity, but in case of passive immunity it is of not of much help. Now active immunity is given in terms of it is given in long term prophylaxis, whereas it is the passive immunity is given in short term prophylaxis. Then active immunity, they administered before the infection, like the vaccines which are given to the children. Then the passive immunity, like administered after the subject has been exposed to an infection. So these are the differences between the active and the passive immunity. Now if we classify the immunity on the basis of its characteristics, it's of two forms. The one is the innate immunity and the one is the adaptive immunity. So innate immunity means these are the physical components which are already there in our body, like the skin, the mucous membrane, the formed elements like the blood cells, right, RBCs, WBCs, the non-specific chemical defenses like the enzymes and other forms. I'll tell you further. Then the inflammation and the fever. These are all the components of our innate immunity. Now next is, which is more specific, okay, it is the adaptive immunity. Now this is more specific, and in this the lymphocytes are involved and the antigen presenting cells are involved. So this is more specific, whereas the innate immunity is non-specific. Now after the the general about the immunity, the next thing which is more important is the immune response. So there are two things which are important in immune response. The first is recognition, another one is the response. So when we say recognition, that means our immune system should be so versatile that it should be able to discriminate between the foreign molecules and the body's own cells and proteins, right? And it should be more specific. Whereas when we talk of response, there are two types of responses. The one is the effector response and another one is the memory response. See, effector response is the one in which the response is created. That means if the foreign invader gains entry into our body, it is simply removed from the body by the neutralization or directly killing that component. Whereas the memory response means, in this case, if the body has been exposed to a particular antigen for the second time, our immune system will immediately recognize that yes, this is the one which we have been exposed earlier also, and then there is an increased or the heightened response to that particular antigen. So see, our immune system generates an enormous variety of cells and molecules which are capable of specifically recognizing and eliminating an apparently limitless variety of foreign invaders. So based on this, our immune system has been divided into the different lines of defense. The first line of defense, it includes our skin, the inner lining, that is a mucous membrane, cilia, the acid which is present in the stomach, the urine flow. These are all the components of the first line of defense. Then comes to the little more specific defense system, that is the second line of defense, in which the more cellular components come into play, and this includes the dendritic cells, the macrophages, monocytes, the RBCs, WBCs, and many more. Okay, then comes the third line of defense, which is even more specific, and in this the T cells and the B cells, they are important, and these all cells they originate in the bone marrow, but depending on their location of actually activation, they have been designated as the T cells and the B cells. Now this is just an overview about the process of hematopoiesis by which these blood cells are actually generated. Now it actually this is before the child is born. Okay, so the hematopoietic stem cells, they bifurcate into the two branches, the one forming the myeloid progenitor, another one is a lymphoid progenitor. The myeloid branch, it gives rise to the granulocyte, monocyte progenitors, eosinophil progenitors, basophil progenitors, and literally forming the dendritic cells, the monocytes, neutrophils, eosinophil, basophil, platelets which are involved in the blood clotting, and the RBCs, that is erythrocytes. Now another branch, that is a lymphoid progenitor, it forms the natural killer cells, the T cells and the B cell progenitor, further forming the T helper cells, T cytotoxic T cells, and the B cells, and further some form of dendritic cells are also formed. Now in this, the macrophages are the one which on maturation becomes the macrophages, and these are the one which are involved in the phagocytosis, which is another part of the second line of defense. Now this talking about the general components of our human immune system, another major player is our lymphatic system. See, there are two types of primary and secondary lymphoid organs. When we say the primary lymphoid organs, it's in this, the major one is actually the thymus, which is the primary lymphoid organ, and the bone marrow, right? Because these are the sites where the maturation of lymphocytes takes place. In case of bone marrow, the B cells mature, and that is why they have been named as the B cells, and the T cells, they they are synthesized in the bone marrow, but when they reach the thymus, they get matured over there or they get activated, and that is why they are termed as the T cells. Then these are the two primary lymphoid organs. Now second is the secondary lymphoid organs, and these include, you can see this, the nodal sort of structures. These are the lymph nodes. Okay, these are present throughout the body. Then the spleen is there. Okay, then the mucosal associated lymphoid tissues are there, like tonsils and other things. So these are all the part of the secondary lymphoid organs. See, this is the another view you can see over here. As blood circulates under the pressure, its fluid component, you are aware what is the fluid component known as? It is the plasma. It seeps through the, this is the blood capillary, the pink one, and when the blood flows with the high pressure, the plasma, it seeps through the openings in this blood capillary into the surrounding interstitial or the tissue fluid. Then much of this fluid, which is called the interstitial fluid, it then returns back to the blood through the capillaries again. But the remainder of the interstitial fluid then forms the lymph, which then moves through the lymphatic capillaries, and they then further join to form the lymphatic vessels. Now the largest lymphatic vessel which is present is the one in the thoracic duct, and this then opens up into the left subclavian vein near the heart. Right, now the lymphatic system captures the fluid lost from the blood and returns it back to the blood, thus ensuring the steady state levels of fluid within the circulatory system. This is the another function of this lymphatic system. And one more thing that I want to tell you, that the blood is actually pumped through the heart, but lymph is not pumped through any organ. Rather, the lymph, the movement of the lymph is basically due to the movement of the body's muscles. Now coming to the next part, this is the enlarged view of the lymph node, these small nodules which you can see over here. So this is the enlarged view of those lymph nodes. You can see there are the afferent vessels, then there is the outgoing capillaries through which the drained lymph actually moves out, and this contains the mass of lymphocytes and the macrophages. Now when a foreign antigen, it gains entry into the tissues, it is picked up by the lymphatic system and is carried to the various organized lymphoid tissues like lymph nodes. So we can say the lymph nodes are basically the filtering assemblies which trap the foreign antigen, and as this lymph passes from tissues to lymphatic vessels, it becomes enriched with the lymphocytes. So thus lymphatic system also serves as a means of transporting these lymphocytes and antigens from the connective tissues to organized lymphoid tissues, where the lymphocytes may interact with the trapped antigen and then they undergo the activation. So in a way, lymphatic system, its main purpose is to screen the tissues of the body for foreign antigen. It is composed of lymphatic vessels and lymphatic cells. It's a one-way system, and I've told you that its flow is basically because of the movement due to the muscles. Then lymph is a liquid with a similar composition to that of the blood plasma. It comes from a fluid leaked from blood vessels into surrounding tissues, and lymph nodes, they contain the WBCs which are called as lymphocytes, which recognize and attack these foreign antigens which are present in the lymph. Now we come to the more specific first line of defense. So basically it involves the structures, chemicals, processes that work to prevent the pathogens entering the cells. So this actually includes the skin, mucous lining of the respiratory, digestive, urinary and reproductive systems. So coming to the first line of defense, the skin, it has got two major layers, that is the thinner, quite thinner epidermis and the quite thicker dermis. Now epidermis is further divided into the layers, and the outermost layer is known as the stratum corneum, which consists of a dead keratinized cells, and these are continuously being replaced. Okay, so in a way the pathogens, they cannot, first of all, because of the dead cells, the pathogens, they cannot penetrate through these outer lining, and further because of the constant shedding of the dead skin cells, it removes any attached microorganisms. Now secondly, there are certain epidermal dendritic cells also present in this region which phagocytose these pathogens. Now Another layer which is quite thicker is the dermis, which is richly supplied with the blood and the nerve fibers, and it further contains a protein which is called as collagen. And this collagen is it works so beautifully that it gives the skin strength and pliability to resist any kind of abrasion that would otherwise make an entry for the microorganism to enter into our body. Now, sweat and sebum, they are the other components which have the protective action. See, sweat is secreted by the sweat glands, and its major component is a salt, and which inhibits the growth of pathogen by drawing the water from their cells. So in this, the osmosis is the major player. Then its another component is the antimicrobial peptides, which kills the peptides which are there in the microorganisms. Another component is a lysozyme, which destroys the cell wall of the bacteria. Now, another component which is very important in the skin is the sebum, which is secreted by the sebaceous glands. You must have seen there is a oily secretion every time on our skin. That is because of the constant release of sebum by the sebaceous glands. Now, sebum consists of a lactic acid and fatty acid, which maintain the pH of skin between 3 to 5, and this pH then doesn't allow the growth of most of the organisms. And when you'll be amazed to know when this outer skin layer is breached or it is cut open by means of wounds or any abrasion, then internal environment is slightly alkaline in nature, and that is more suitable for any microorganism to enter and grow. So it also helps to keep the skin pliable and less likely to break or tear. Now, another component, the mucous membrane. So you are aware that all the inner lining of our body is lined with a slimy layer which is known as a mucous membrane, and unlike the outer epidermal layers, these all epithelial cells which are there in this mucous lining, they are all living cells. Further, they are so tightly packed and they are only simply one layer thick, and at the end of these layers there are certain specialized cells known as goblet cells which constantly release a chemical which is known as a mucin, and that is actually responsible for the production of the mucus. Now, this mucus, which when released, any microorganism, if for example it gains entry into this region, the mucus entangles it gets entangled in the mucus, and then with a constant flow they are being constantly actually evacuated out of the body. And you'll be again surprised to know that every day we swallow and digest about 1 liter of mucus. So there are other components also which are there in this mucous lining. Together with this, the lysozymes, they also play an important role, and other antimicrobial peptides are also there. So with this, we come to the end of the first line of defense. Thank you.